Hey guys, it's M4J here and welcome back to the Majeffries network on OpenTTD. Now today we are going mental with roads, or Motorway Mania as I've decided to call it. I think I hinted it towards this a few episodes ago now, but I just thought we need some main roads around Gardcity, very much like the M25, which I will talk about a little bit in just a second. But today we're going to build some main roads. We're going to try and get some coach routes running between Gardcity and some of the towns around the outskirts of the city. And we're just going to slow down on the trains for today's episode. We will be back using trains in the next episode. And probably the episode after that, thinking about it. Because there is some stuff that I do want to say. I think I've got it set up for not next episode but the episode after, so I will stick to that plan. In fact, I mentioned some of it next episode, so I will stick to that plan most definitely. So today we're going with roads. Now, as I say, this road is based on the M25. For those of you that don't know what the M25 is, it's the main motorway. For those of you that don't know what a motorway is, it's a freeway or a highway. I think it's more akin to a highway than a freeway. Although there are some sort of hybrid roads we have here in the UK, like near where I live there's a road called the A1M, which is kind of a freeway main road, but it's built to motorway standards, which I think is pretty cool. So this anyway is my version of the M25, which is the main road that circles London. I think it's also known as the London Orbital, but that's not its main name. There are 3 orbital roads around London. There is the M25, which is the main orbital road. There's also 2 little sub-routes. One's called the North Orbital, one's called the South Orbital. They're not very good. That's where most traffic ends up building up. Mostly because of poor planning. Mostly also because of projects that were planned that never actually went ahead. Now, if people have already read the episode plans, you know what I'm going to talk about today. But the North Orbital and the South Orbital roads, and indeed the M25, were all part of a big plan called the Ringways. Ringways were essentially main roads designed to take traffic away from the centre of London. Unfortunately, a lot of the ringways weren't actually built. Anyone who's ever driven on the M25, you get to South Mimms, where the M25 connects with the A1M, and you'll notice that the 2 carriageways sort of separate for quite a distance and then join back together again. That was originally part of a ringway plan, where the M25 would continue via slip roads, which is why they separate like that, almost as if there's a road in between them. And the ringway would have sort of swung round to the south and headed in towards central London. And I think it was supposed to connect up with the North Circular. If I look up very quickly, there's a very good channel, Jay Foreman. Very good YouTuber, very funny. He did a series called Unfinished London, and one of the episodes was about the London ringways. And despite the fact it's full of jokes, joke a minute almost, there's a lot of good information in there as well. So I do urge you to check out his channel if you haven't done so already. So there's going to be 4 ringways: Ringway 1, Ringway 2, Ringway 3, and Ringway 4. Ringway 1 was the London motorway box, comprising the north, east, south and west cross routes, which sounds quite heavy actually. It sounds like there's going to be a lot of building work going on there. Unfortunately, as I say, it didn't end up happening. Ringway 2 was an upgrade of the North Circular Road and replacement for the South Circular Road. Now what that means is most of the North Circular Road is actually dual carriageway, 2 lanes in each direction, quite busy, separated from other side roads. The South Circular is 1 carriageway in each direction, and it's basically just a normal road that was classified as being the South Circular, so that gets very, very busy. Also just goes through loads of housing estates, and it's just a normal road. I don't know why they decided that that should be the South Circular and not just start from scratch, but there you go. Ringway 3 was a new road, the north section of which became part of the M25. I believe Ringway 3 is the one I was talking about, where the M25 meets the A1. I believe that's part of Ringway 3. And Ringway 4 is a new road, the south section of which became part of the M25 and the M26. So if I look up each individual one, I believe Ringway 1 was supposedly to be built in kind of a spiral shape. There's one that was meant to be built in a spiral shape. None of them completed full circuits like the M25 does, although it could be argued that the M25 doesn't, because the section across the River Thames at Dartford is actually not the M25, it's an A road, and I believe it's been done like that so that vehicles that aren't allowed to drive on motorways can still cross the river at that point. I believe that's why they did that, which, if so, is quite clever. I know when I was a learner driver, I got quite frustrated at times that I'd have to take all the back routes because I couldn't go on the motorway. So if that's why that was done, then it's quite nice. So Ringway 1, or the London Motorway Box, was the innermost of the series of 4 motorway standard roads. I am reading this off Wikipedia, by the way. I'm not pretending that I know anything about this, because believe me, roads are not one of my main interests in life, as hard as that might be to believe. Right, known as the London Ringways, as part of a comprehensive scheme developed by the Greater London Council to provide high-speed motorway standard roads within the capital, linking a series of radial roads taking traffic into and out of the city. The scheme was cancelled in 1973. So Ringway 1 was planned to comprise 4 sections across the capital, forming a roughly rectangular box of motorways. These sections were designated the North Cross Route, from Harlesden to Hackney Wick via West Hampstead, Camden Town, Highbury and Dalston. So literally almost following the line of the North London line. Yes, I'm going back to railways. East Cross Route from Hackney Wick to Kidbrooke via Bow, Blackwall and Greenwich. So that's further east than the East London line. Almost following the line of the Jubilee line. Give or take, maybe more akin to the Docklands actually, Docklands Light Railway. South Cross Route from Kidbrooke to Battersea via Lewisham, Peckham, Brixton and Clapham. That is very much the South London line's route, or at least it goes via Clapham, Peckham, I believe Lewisham. And then the West Cross Route from Harlesden to Battersea via North Kensington, Shepherd's Bush, West Kensington, Earls Court and Chelsea Harbour. Basically the West London line. So even then they were sort of planning on, I don't know whether it was deliberate or not, but the roads were following the railways. That would have been the smart idea, is actually have the roads follow along the lines of the railways, because the railways are already there and people know about them. So it's a good way of getting cars also onto that sort of corridor that goes through the city. Much of the scheme would have been constructed as elevated roads on concrete pylons. If there's one thing I hate, absolutely despise, I went to Brentford a few years ago to see Stevenage play away there, and you'd go on to, I think it's the tail end of the M4 as it becomes the A4, and it just becomes this raised road in the middle of this area of London, and it just looks awful. There's a bit like that in Luton as well. I think it's part of the Ring Road in Luton. Oh, it just looks terrible. Elevated roads on concrete pylons in the middle of towns and cities just looks awful, in my opinion. I think they could do a lot better job with it. And the routes were designed to follow the alignments of existing railway lines, there we go, to minimise the amount of land required for construction. Yeah, so that's basically what I was saying. You have the corridor already in existence, you might as well utilise it for more than one form of transport. Nevertheless, the disruption and widespread demolition required to build the ringway would have been considerable. So the cost of Ringway 1 in today's money was £6.7 billion. That's a lot of money. Anyone who complains about how much Crossrail has cost and how much High Speed 2 has cost and said, oh, you should upgrade the roads and the existing rail lines. Well, that's how much it'll cost you, my friend. £6.7 billion. Including £1.95 billion just for property purchases in order to demolish them to make way to build the road. That's a considerable waste of money. It would affect 7,585 houses. In 1970, the GLC, which is the Greater London Council, set aside £1.7 billion, which is worth £23.7 billion today, for the construction of half of the ringways. Half of them. That means the whole ringway would have cost £47.4 billion. High Speed 2, to my knowledge, at the moment, costs £32 billion. That's why I believe High Speed 2 is worth it. I'm not going to get into that debate today because I can go on for hours about it, but that is my argument. If they're spending 10 billion less than that just on roads in London, I'm sure they can afford to build High Speed 2. Anyway, the only parts of Ringway 1 that were constructed were part of the West Cross route between North Kensington and Shepherd's Bush, which was opened by... we don't need to know about that. Simultaneously with Westway, to loud protests, some residents hung up huge banners with "Get us out of this hell, rehouse us now" outside their windows, and protesters disrupted the opening procession by driving a lorry the wrong way along the new road. There's always protesters. I like that though. I don't mind that. The East Cross route, including a new eastern bore for the Blackwall Tunnel, opened between 1967 and 1979. So yeah, the ringways were quite controversial when they were first announced. Just like everything in modern day life is quite controversial when it's first announced. And you can already see, I've done a little bit of demolition on the map already to actually make way for the road to go through. There are some bits of the road that I'm quite happy with. There are some bits that I'm not so happy with, but it's not a main road. We're not going to be. It's not like Cities in Motion where I used to have to worry about civilian cars as well. This is just my transport routes and that's it. So I'm not too upset by how it's turned out. And I think some of the junctions, like this one you're seeing on screen right now, actually turned out quite well. At the end of this episode, there is only one coach route in operation. Guard Lake is going to be the hub of all coach routes into and out of Gardcity. And the first route goes between Guard Lake and Great Rinston Airport, which is a bit of a pointless route in some respects because the train that goes through Guard Lake does then carry on down to Great Rinston. I can't speak, but I can't remember how long it takes. The coaches operate at 30 to 40 miles per hour off the motorways, and then they operate at 70 miles an hour on the motorways via a clever use of bus stops, which you will see very shortly indeed. Yeah, overall, I have to say I'm quite happy. This is the main route, I believe, out of Gardcity that's currently joining up with the freeway here. I was going to join this more down towards the west, but I saw that opportunity there and had to take it. I might change it in the future and actually have the other main route, Let's Be Avenue, have that join up with the road. I'm trying to think, what did I decide? I think I just decided to call it the Gardcity Orbital, the main road around. The road that we've connected up from Gardcity to the Orbital is the Menwell Way, because it starts at a place called Menwell, and that's about it really for my name origins for my roads. I will in the next few episodes, possibly off camera, go through all of the tram stops and bus stops in Gardcity and name them after streets rather than areas, and that frees up some names for future stations if I do decide to build more lines. I do have a feeling though that Gardcity itself is almost at an end. We're almost at a point where we can just let Gardcity get on with things and we can go and build elsewhere. I'm pretty happy with how it's turned out. I really like the HLR. That's been really successful in my opinion. The Metro, I've built it slightly unusually to how I would normally build it, but in terms of how well it's worked, I'd say it was a major success. I think having all of the lines join up with the circle line and then radiate out again has actually gone better than trying to build lines that just crisscross the city and have maybe station connections. Having them all run on the same track, I've not seen any delays, which I think is really cool. The fact that we've got, I think it's 6 metro lines. Let me check. Yeah, technically 6. I've actually split the South Bank into 2 for operational reasons. The trains still run from end to end. That hasn't changed, but in terms of listing the stations, I've got South Bank West and South Bank East because it is by far the longest route on the map, so it made sense. I'm hoping Reedy understands this as well when I send him through the list. It made sense to sort of split it in the middle from South Bank onwards, just so that the map looks a little bit clearer. You don't just have this one solid line that runs right the way through the city. But you know, I'm open to discussions on that one because it was a compromise at the time when I was just creating the list. Here you can see I'm adding some more junctions. I did quite enjoy building these junctions because each one is slightly different to the next, which I think was quite cool, especially the ones sort of here where it interacts with a town. In this case the motorway crosses over the town, yes, by a big concrete viaduct. We will somehow make it look nicer. I might use the tubular steel ones because they do actually look nicer. Plus, this is something I'm surprised that real life freeways haven't been built like this. If you put some kind of tunnel over the bridge, you can then keep all the noise inside the tunnel, which is good for noise pollution, but you can also decorate the outside of it and make it look quite nice. So yeah, we'll see about that. This is the other side of the Menwell Way. I'm always going to get that wrong. This is the only route actually that goes right the way through Gardcity and connects up at the other end. And you can see I had to do a lot of shifting around here to try and get it to go through properly. It was a bit of a pain rebuilding quite a lot of towns actually to be able to get the roads to go through. It's definitely an experience that I would not want to repeat on this grand scale, that's for sure. I just think in some cases it's just easier to not have to worry about roads. And you will also see at the end of this episode I use a series of bus stops as waypoints for two reasons. One, it allows me to adjust the speed of the vehicles at various points along the route. The second reason is the main reason for it really was I spent 2 hours building this series of roads, and by the end of it, as I was planning out the route for the coaches, I realised that no main roads actually go near Guard Lake at the moment. Let'sby Avenue sort of terminates not far from Guard Lake but slightly to the south. And I just had this horrible feeling that I would plan out this route, set the coach on its way, and it would just take all of the back roads and wouldn't actually use the main roads. So I have used the bus stops as a series of waypoints for speed purposes and also for directional purposes. Which I think actually has made it work out slightly better. Slightly better. Not perfectly, but slightly better. And you can see here I'm now connecting the other side of the Menwell Way up to the orbital route. This junction here is one of my least favourites. I will be definitely hiding this with trees. It just happened to be where the two roads would meet, was 6 blocks up in the air. So we've had to build this raised interchange, which, I mean, some motorways, just driving around the M25, I go around there a lot when I go to places like Thorpe Park, because basically to get anywhere in the country south of London, for me, I have to go around the M25. It's that, or you drive through central London and spend 6 hours wondering why you make these mistakes in life. So I see a lot of different types of motorway junction, and there are some that the joining road goes underneath the motorway, there are some where the joining road goes above the motorway, and there are some where the joining road just terminates at the motorway. There's junctions like where the M1 meets the M25, where it only joins up in one direction, so it's anti-clockwise, joins up to the north of the M1. You can't go from any other direction. Actually, I think you can go from, I'm just trying to think, I think you might actually be able to go from clockwise to south, maybe? No, you can't join going south on the M1 there. That's right, because there's another junction a little bit further up that you can get to, the way you can go south. But I think you can join from both directions going to the north on the M1. So that's an interesting junction to look at, because you see these big ones where you've got one of the roads at the bottom, one of the roads at the top, and then all the slipways sort of zigzag their way through that big gap in the middle. And you look at the one where the M25 meets the M1, and you can almost see where the ones are missing that would allow you to go south. You can almost pick out exactly the route that bridge would take. But that's just me. I mean, I say I have no interest in roads. I have some interest in roads. I wouldn't have built these in this episode if I didn't. But I'm definitely more interested in aviation and railways than I am in automotion. Automotion? Cars, let's just say that. I don't mind cars, I'm not a big fan of roads. And you can see here we're getting towards the end of the episode now in terms of actual building. There is still some you see me do some route planning for the coaches in a second. This is the new road depot that I've built. This is mainly for coaches that are going to operate out of Guard Lake. This is the Riverside Road Vehicle Depot. You can see I've just put them all in like so, and then we put the depot at the end, and then I do put where is it? Any second now. I do put a bus stop at the entrance to act as a waypoint. The original Let's Be Avenue stop that we used for buses and I believe some taxis as well, that's now been downgraded to just signify the start of the main road. It's no longer an actual stop. That is one thing I do have to remember, is the majority of these bus stops now around this main road are waypoints and they are not actual stops. I kind of wish that there was maybe there is actually a new GRF that allows me to build waypoints on roads. That'd be incredibly helpful. I have got the game open actually on my screen. I haven't missed anything like that, have I? It certainly doesn't look like I have. There's the one-ways, bridges, tunnels, bulldoze, the 2 stations depot, the bomb, and then the different road types, and that's it. So I feel like they're missing a trick there, not having a waypoint for roads, because that is incredibly handy to have. If you want to put a one-way system, or you just want a system whereby your buses go one way and your other vehicles go another way, waypoints is a really good way of being able to do that. And at the moment, just having to use bus stops as waypoints, it's quite counterproductive, I would say. You can see here I'm sort of building this one last junction before it becomes a main road. Menwell Way is a bit of a strange one because through the town it is basically just a bit of a dual carriageway, but you can just turn on and off it pretty much wherever you want. It's only once it gets past that final junction that you just saw me build that it turns into a full-on motorway. So I have used bus stops there as waypoints. You can see I'm just placing them at the start and end of every junction. And they have all been named on the Menwell Way. They haven't yet been named on the Gardcity orbital, because I have been debating where exactly the beginning is going to be. I think the beginning is probably going to be one of the bigger junctions, and I would like to say it's going to be over at where Rinston Airport is, because it's the only airport at the moment that's actually linked up directly to the orbital. So that kind of makes sense. I think on the M25 junction 1 is the Dartford crossing, I think. Let me find out. I believe that's where it starts and ends. What would be awesome is if they actually had a list. There you go, M20 junction 1. Or is that the M20's junction 1? I have a horrible feeling that might be the M20's junction 1. That's a strange junction as well, because they've clearly designed it so that you can do flyovers and things like that, but it's all very one-sided still. Let's see, I've got an M25 map here. Junctions on the north side of the M25. So yeah, junction 20 is up at the... Oh, here we go. So junction 1 is... Yes, junction 1 is the lower half of the Dartford crossing, and then it runs anti-clockwise all the way around to junction 31. Although junction 1 technically is split into A and B, which is a bit cheaty. So junction 1 is on the east side. That's weird. So there's junctions on the north side of the M25. Then there's... Oh, there you go, junctions on the east side. Right, junction 1A is on the south side of the Dartford crossing and connects to the A206, and junction 1B connecting to the A226 to Dartford on to the west inside the M25 and to Swanscombe to the east outside the M25. Fair enough. So then junction 2 is the M2, which I know very well, having visited my brother in Canterbury many times over the years and he was there for uni. I'm probably waffling way too much about this now. Basically, we're going to put a junction 1 somewhere on the road, and then all the other junctions will stem out from that. One thing I'm not looking forward to is if I build a new junction on the road and then I have to go around and renumber them all. I'm going to try and build all the junctions first, and then I'm going to go number them all, just to save myself some time and effort, because I think that'll be most beneficial to everybody. Right, we are nearly at the end, if I remember rightly. 25 minutes I believe this episode went on for. Might have gone on for longer. I probably sound like an idiot now if you're looking at it thinking, no, it's a hell of a lot longer than that, Mark. But anyway, future plans, next episode, let's talk about next episode. So next episode I am going to be going back to basics. No fancy motorways, no fancy metal trains or iron ore or coal or anything like that. We're just going to go back to solid passenger line building. One of the reasons is I heard someone give me a shout out recently. I'm not going to reveal too much about that right now, and it's one they did a long time ago, so I should have known about it a hell of a lot before, a hell of a lot earlier than I do now. But we are going to be going back to basics. So with that in mind, and I can now see the end of the episode arriving, I am going to start wrapping up here, guys. So hopefully you enjoyed this little bit of motorway building. If you did, be sure to hit that like button down below. Also hit the like button if you're enjoying the series. Drop some comments down below with ideas for future episodes. Also check out the name list and all that kind of stuff. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button. I'm tripping over my words. If you have already subscribed to the channel, thank you guys for your continued support. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, I will see you soon.